Hello everyone, my name is Jonathan Bailey and I'm from the site Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com. And well, first a few show notes here. One is I am rearranging my office a little bit here. So if you're noticing that the lighting is not as good as it usually is, or I should say even worse, it's because I haven't put all the lighting in yet. I'm kind of improvising it as I go right now. The other thing is that obviously I did not have the little graphic below, and that's because I did not save the file from yesterday like a moron. And I'm looking at my backups. I still have another day of download ahead of me for the backups to finish, and then I'll have all that information, and I'll be able to just simply use the one I had previously. So bear with me. A lot of construction and dust cleaning, if you will. I was going to continue the conversation on copyright and plagiarism, and I suppose in a way I will. But my first thought today, and what's really been on my mind, is that I woke up to a push alert this morning on my phone regarding the local newspaper here in New Orleans, the Times-Picayune. It's a daily newspaper, at least it was a daily newspaper here in the city, and it's scaling back operations from a daily paper to 2 to 3 times per week. And it's also going to lay off 50 of its 150 employees. The online presence, NOLA.com, will not be affected by this, which that's good news. But the newspaper itself obviously being deeply slashed, and I'm not surprised by this. Crystal, my significant other, worked at the Times-Picayune about 5-6 years ago. It was a while ago, and back then the paper was already in a lot of trouble, and there was a lot of warning signs then. I only know one other person who works there right now, and they work in a packaging job, actually. I don't know any reporters, at least not very well. So it's frustrating, though, but it's still a very frustrating situation. I happen to really like the newspaper there, and the people I have met there through Crystal and through others have been very, very kind to me, very good, and they're wonderful people. They do a good job. They won a Pulitzer following their coverage of Hurricane Katrina, and they've done a lot of good things for the community in New Orleans. They took on government officials. They've been very, very prominent and challenging challenging our local government, which oftentimes is not as good as it should be. In fact, there's a legend in the city, and it's one that's been confirmed by at least one Times-Picayune employee to me, and semi-confirmed by another. But basically, the legend goes that when they were building the interstate system here in New Orleans, the Times-Picayune was very critical of the design, very critical of the process by which it was being built. And as a result of that, the designer ensured that the interstate literally runs right by the Times-Picayune. When you're driving through the city, you think you're going to crash into the big spire. You think you're going to crash into the building. Though the interstate would run by the Times-Picayune, they would not have good interstate access. And indeed, if you drive to the Times-Picayune's office, access to it is quite terrible from the interstate. You've got to drive about half a mile or so at least to find an on-ramp. Actually, I think it might be a little more than that. But you got to drive a long ways to find a on-ramp from the Times-Picayune office, and it does appear that actually was the case. So they've been bold. They've challenged government, and I've not always agreed with them, but they've always been a big figure in our community, and I think this is a definite loss for New Orleans. A lot of this is, of course, changing in journalism. Every newspaper, it seems, is battling reduced subscription, reduced circulation, reduced advertising. But the Times-Picayune, of course, had the double whammy of its market being severely hurt by Hurricane Katrina, both in terms of population and advertising. Two 1-2 punches right there that they've never really recovered from, even though, like I said, they won the Pulitzer for their coverage of Katrina. But it's still a tragic day for New Orleans, and it's still a tragic day, definitely for the newspaper. My heart goes out to the people who are losing their job, especially those who found out first in the New York Times report. My heart really goes out to them. But what I find frustrating about this is people wonder why news media has been doing things like launching Right Haven, launching these attacks on the internet. Well, here's a big part of the problem. It's there's a huge contraction in the market. A lot of it is due to the shift to online media, the shift to broadcast media, and a lot of it also has to do with the fact that a lot of websites and a lot of services online are building their brand using the reporting that's paid for by these newspapers, and it's very hard to compete with people who take your work, repackage it, and ship it out at a much reduced price. Um, it's a very frustrating situation for them, and they are definitely in a bind. Now, like I said, I don't know how much that actually impacted the Times-Picayune. I've never done any content enforcement work. I've never done any tracking. I just genuinely don't know what their situation is there. But I know other newspapers have been hampered by it more greatly, especially the wire services like AP and Reuters, and that's why you're seeing the AP meltwater case, for example. But, you know, this is part of what's going on in journalism today. It's a setback. It's a huge deal, and I have to wonder if there's going to be anything to replace the Times-Picayune locally. I mean, it's not going away. Like I said, it's being scaled back to 2 or 3 times a week. But let's not be naive here. You scale back a daily newspaper to less than half of its publications, its impact, its influence is going to wane. So I really don't have any direction I want to take that, other than say once again my heart goes out to the employees who are losing their job. Definitely is a dark day for New Orleans. Definitely a dark day for the Times-Picayune. But I am hoping that good things do come out of it in the long run. Like I said, NOLA.com will be unaffected. So I guess we'll see what happens long term with this. But right now, it's just kind of a sad day for me. That's all I've really got. Sorry if it was a bit rambly, but I'll just leave it there and say that this is Jonathan Bailey signing off.